In this presentation, I will try to be brief, but to talk about almost all the things that we do at our research group. For if you are interested to come to Granada one day to join us, that will be our pleasure. So first of all, well, I'm here with thanks also to the UniDive project. I'm so thankful for this project and for you to accepting me here. And here I will talk about EcoLexcion, frame-based terminology, terms, domains, translation, and culture. You will see that I will involve all those issues inside my presentation. So first I will explain, talk about lexicon, about EcoLexcion, the terminological knowledge base on environment. I will talk about our current projects and about my own research about metaphor, because I used to work precisely on metaphor and climate change. So I will try to involve all those things. So this is my research group, like we are the whole group and the Christmas dinners that we have here at Granada. We are growing too. And as you see, I hope to welcome you in Granada one day. The head of our group is Pamela Faber, Professor Pamela Faber, and now also Pilar Leon and others. They are both heads, and I hope you will meet them one day. The group was established since 1994, and we work on terminology, lexical semantics, lexicography, metaphor, translation, and specialized knowledge representation. And we follow the premises of frame-based terminology, which is a theoretical approach to terminology. So frame-based terminology is a systematic set of theoretical principles that reflect the cognitive and linguistic nature of terms as access points to knowledge configuration. This coincides a lot with the frame-net semantics that you work on, and it's a descriptive and text-driven approach, and we use corpus analysis. Basically, we use sketch engine for our analysis. Frames, as we define it from the perspective of frame-based terminology, is a knowledge structure that relates entities associated with a particular culturally embedded scene, situation, or event. So we use frame-based terminology. The aim is structuring specialized domains and creating non-language specific representations. And such configurations are the conceptual meaning underlying specialized text in different languages, and it facilitates specialized knowledge acquisition. So when we create our knowledge bases, it helps the acquisition of scientific knowledge more easily for the use of translators, terminologists, or even for experts. And EcoLexcion is the most current and recent practical application of frame-based terminology, because we had in the past something on oncologies. It's called Oncoterm, and it's a previous application. And now we work on EcoLexcion, and it's a multilingual dynamic terminological knowledge base on environment, and it's accessible online. If you want to access it, you can do so. And it's constructed initially on the notion of frames and events. So first of all, we have this environmental frame, and all the other frame events, we call it the environmental event, and all the other events of environment should be involved and follow the template of this event. So we have here an agent, which can be a natural agent or a human one, that carries out a process, which can be natural process or artificial process, and a patient or a result that, like, the process affects this patient to produce this result. And we have here the attributes. So we have this big event, and any other event that we want to study with an environment, it has to follow this. And I will explain a little bit more when I go to the metaphor part about my own research on a couple of more events to show you more how it works properly and how we use frames for our research. But going back to Lexicon, this is the web page of Lexicon. If you go to I will leave the links for you, and you have here like you can search for words in like terms. They are not words. It's fed with concepts and their conceptual relations and their ontological categories. And then you can have their definition, and we have 7 languages, Arabic among them, Arabic, Spanish, French, German, even Greek, modern Greek. And as long as you click on on the term here, you can have the whole conceptual map of each concept. So for example, here you have the term designating the search concept in various languages. When you click on them, that you have the definition, and you can see that the definition we created and we extracted out of templates. So we extract the conceptual relations and have a sort of standardized template for to create definitions for all the terms and the conceptual relations that it has. Here we have resources such as images, documents, URLs, audiovisual materials. So if we click here, for example, on this word fan, you will have the image of the fan. But what we haven't done yet is to annotate those images. So this is something that we will do in the future, but we did insert some images and associated them to some of the concepts. And finally here, those are this section of lexicon, EcoLexcion. It indicates the general conceptual category of the concept within the environmental domain. And here you can see all the conceptual categories that we have. So it is properly classified if it's an agent, process, description, or a patient, according to the big environmental event. And those are the categories that each time we insert a concept, we categorize it accordingly within the system. So when you click on the term, you can see that the whole conceptual map will be expanded in on the screen. And of course, you can see, if you come closer, you can see the conceptual relations among the terms. And it moves a lot. In fact, like, you can expand it as much as you want to see the whole environmental event and how terms are associated to each other. Those are the definitional templates. This is an example. Here, for example, we have hard coastal defense structure. It's a type of construction located at a shoreline made of material and then has function coastal defense. So to define GRION, which is like the hypernym of hard coastal defense, we have again the conceptual relations, and we have this template, and we always use it. Then we create the whole definition, like hard coastal defense structure made of concrete, wood, steel, and all this information is extracted from corpora, from specialized corpus, and never. Although we also use the top-down and bottom-up approach, but we always extract those relations from corpus and use them as a template. And in lexicon, we also have a way to calculate the path. So for example, if we click, we want to see the path between carbon dioxide and water cycle. It extracts the conceptual relations that we inserted within EcoLexcion to calculate that it would be this path. And if we click on it, we can see that carbon acid, for example, made of carbon dioxide, and then, or it is a type of acid, and the whole relation that it will have with water. But you can click on each of the relations, and you can see the huge work that lies behind this work and EcoLexcion. So our current projects in lexicon, it's that we are trying to involve a culture within this knowledge base. And our current project is financed by the Ministry of Education, and it's called Transversal Integration of Culture into an Environmental Terminological Knowledge Base. So what we are trying to do is transforming EcoLexcion into an inclusive resource sensitive to cultural variation. And this implies adapting all of its modules, the definitions, the semantic networks, or also the phraseology, and even the graphical resources, so that it detects the cultural element within the terms. For example, if we talk about geography, a sort of brain that exists in one place or another, we want EcoLexcion to be sensitive to this issue. And I would recommend this paper if you want to know a little bit more on how we are involving culture with terminology. Like it's a new tendency also in terminology in that case. The other project that I am working on is it was funded by the Association of Researching and Applying Metaphor. Any one of you who's working with metaphor, I would recommend for you this association. And I had funding from what they call Building Bridges Funds. The idea of this project came because we worked on the automatic extraction of metaphoric names of flowers and plants using natural language processing techniques. And I had to annotate the whole encyclopedia from in English and Spanish and some other people in other languages. So now we are inserting the metaphoric names of flowers in EcoLexcion. But of course, we have to create the whole conceptual tree of the whole names and concepts of flowers. So this is the second project that we are working on. Now I would love to mention a little bit my work on metaphor so that you can visualize and understand the abstract notion of frame-based terminology and how we apply it. So I will explain a little bit my own research in this case. So I used to work, and I'm still working on metaphor-based terms in climate change discourse in English, Arabic, and Spanish. I know you all know about it, but just to make things a bit clear, we distinguish between primary and secondary terms. Primary terms are the terms coined when we discover one idea or one thing in nature to coin new notions and new terms to the new ideas. And the secondary terms are the creation of a new term for an existing concept. And it's usually from English, the lingua franca, into other languages. So, a metaphor, as I define it in this research, is a mapping of conceptual structure from a source to a target domain. It involves giving a new meaning by analogy to that of established term. And we consider it as a powerful cognitive mechanism that triggers both lexical and textual creativity. So in subjects and domains like climate change, it's very important, the use of metaphor, because it influences a lot how we think and how we perceive the world and how we understand the abstract notions. And of course, we are trying to teach people to make them understand and educate them about how to struggle against climate change. So our wording is very important in that case. And it, of course, analogy helps in the comprehension of new terms. Though when it comes to cross-linguistic transfer of terms, this has to do with different conceptual systems and unshared cultural or structural elements. That is, when we transfer the term, sometimes we don't take into consideration the whole conceptual system of a language and the culture, and we just transfer the terms only by calques or literal translation. So we have seen that this is a problem, and those techniques of translation may involve a risk of universal conceptual standardization, and it would involve also the invasion and absorption of other conceptual systems. So English will take over other conceptual systems just because of the process of translation. This is what they call domain loss in that case. It involves also a risk of erosion of cultural and linguistic diversity. And this domain loss phenomenon, they used to say that it happened, and they detected it first in the minority languages, such as Scandinavian languages. And it's there where they started talking about it. But they haven't ever talking about the hegemony of English and influencing other non-minority languages, such as Spanish and English. And Arabic, sorry. So here I want to show how this study using frame-based terminology helped in detecting some layers of difference in the way we translate and we transmit the ideas. And well, this is something new also in this aspect. And I believe that the transfer of metaphor-based terms from one language into another requires a conscious knowledge of the underlying conceptual systems at linguistic and cultural levels. So it's very important to analyze the conceptual systems that lie behind before transferring the terms. So this is the main objective of this research. So my case studies are about two terms. One is carbon capture and sequestration, and I used it for the poster of the conference, and the coral bleaching term and its translation into Arabic. So the methodology that I followed is the identification of constructions, the description of the conceptual profile, the description of the lexical profile, specification of the frame relations and attributes, the representation of the frame definitional template. So I followed, each time I analyze a term, we follow the whole steps and we create the whole environmental event of each term. And the corpus I use is usually comparable corpus, ADOC 1, and a parallel corpus, above all with Arabic and English, properly aligned with Trados, and the EcoLexcion corpus that you can also access on Sketch Engine. It's available there. So why I choose the words carbon capture, capture and bleaching? It's because the first meaning of capture is in the Cambridge Dictionary is to take someone as a prisoner or to take something into your possession, especially by force. So this is the first meaning activated when you read this word, and it is not when I analyzed the corpus, the specialized corpus, I detected this word and I noticed that it may have a metaphoric meaning. Whereas the word bleach means a strong chemical used to for cleaning things or removing color from things. So this is how I extracted the whole term associated with those lexical units. And then I started working on the carbon capture first, carbon capture and sequestration. So by using the corpus, top-down and bottom-up analysis, I extracted the relations and created the whole environmental event of carbon capture and sequestration based on the conceptual relations, and we created the definition. So this term would mean a process to capture a carbon dioxide produced during the human activity of combustion of fossil fuel, transport it, and finally storage it permanently in geological formations or in deep sea beds to prevent it from reaching the atmosphere and consequently mitigate climate change. So this definition was we could detect all the frame elements of the police seizure, detecting all the frame elements from the whole corpus, and we have those metaphoric frame elements such as the capture, which is the process, the imprisonment, the transportation, the liberation, the police, the criminal, and even the police car to transfer the to transport the criminal from its place to the jail. So all those elements could be detected in the specialized corpus. So we do use them to articulate our discourse, our specialized discourse. And we analyzed all the terminological concordances and extracted all the frame elements, the metaphorical one on each case. And then we compared it to Spanish. So in Spanish, the term used for carbon capture and sequestration, it's captura y secuestro del carbono. So it's obvious that there was a literal translation in there, and we tried to analyze the Spanish corpus in this case. We extracted again all the concordances and saw how what they activate in the Spanish corpus. And indeed, they tried to activate the police seizure, but at the same time, we noticed some differences because the word sequestration is a false friend of the word secuestrar. Secuestrar in Spanish would mean kidnap and not storage as it is in English. So of course, here in Spanish, we are activating two different frames. One is the police seizure, where the carbon is the criminal causing the climate change, whereas in Spanish, we are kidnapping the carbon, which is, in this case, the victim of us kidnapping it from its atmosphere, no? So, and this is how we are trying to convince people that this technique is proper for the to combat climate change. So, of course, I wouldn't have arrived to this conclusion unless I we analyzed first our corpus according to frame-based terminology. So it was such a coincidence to see that at this stage, there was a false print in there. And of course, we can see that we do say sequestrar el carbono, like kidnapping the carbon. We do use this a lot, and it is a very frequent concordance in the specialized corpus. Now I will mention briefly also the case with Arabic about the choral bleaching. We analyzed the corpus again, top-down and bottom-up analysis, because I say top-down and bottom-up because apart from the specialized corpus, we also visit dictionaries and Wikipedias to make sure that, like, to compare and produce a proper definition with the and to create the whole event of choral bleaching as it is here right now. And the definition would be a process of loss of color in a way that it acquires a white tone. This process is produced due to factors related to climate change, such as high temperature of oceans, as well as extreme events such as El Niño. This process may last short periods, after which corals may live, but if the period was prolonged, the corals die. And there's a very important part, and it's when the color is, the corals lose the color because of the separation of the algae from the corals. So there is a process of separation too, and we could only extract that through the conceptual analysis of the corpus. So here we have noticed the similarity between the choral bleaching term and the textile bleaching frame event, metaphoric frame. And we had extracted all the frame elements. We have the bleaching, the textile, the color molecules, the color, the bleaching agent. For example, the breaking of the color molecules, which is similar to the breaking of the separation of the algae from the colors, and it's expressed with the same terms too, and articulated in discourse. So we have the coral tissue, the loss of color. They talk a lot about loss of color in the choral bleaching. And in Arabic, we have found, when we compared it to Arabic, we have found two terms, and both terms are frequently used, though the first one is the most frequent one in discourse. So we had ibyadat al-marjan and tabyid al-marjan. So the difference, and we have seen that they are used, sometimes even in the same discourse, even in the most specialized ones of the UN, corpora, for example, we can see that they are frequently used. And the difference between the first one and the second one is the intentionality. So the first one would imply that someone intentionally changes something, while the second one would mean that there is no intentionality. And of course, in this event, who's responsible for climate change? Like, is it changing itself? Are the corals bleaching themselves just because they want, or because we do things wrong and we produce climate change and this produces climate change? So this is and of course, at a cognitive level, we are trying to convince people what to do or what not. So the choice of words is very important. And we could only, again, detect that only through this frame-based terminology approach. So of course, I here detected, to conclude a little bit and not prolong a lot this presentation, like false frames are one of the errors that we may find, and the unmeditated literal translation. Like, I do think we should study the conceptual levels behind the terms before we translate them. And calcs, of course, like, it's not like it's the easiest way to transfer a term, but perhaps not the most secure one to make sure that languages are growing according to our own cultures and not following only English, for example, and this is very important. And this may produce conceptual and cognitive disequilibrium. And the English used as a source language lacks very often clear delineation of concepts and terms. So this very first study is not carried out in English first, and its terms are just coined according to this culture. And then we have to avoid that, to avoid the impoverishment of the conceptual systems of our target languages, like the languages to which we translate. And to avoid also cognitive fuzziness and polysemy, produced by polysemy and synonymy, because sometimes so many terms are coined. For example, in Arabic, for the carbon capture and sequestration, we have one proper term, but because we don't have a standardization techniques for terminology, these terms survived together with other 6 terms. Some of them uses the metaphor of hunting instead of the procedure. So, and this is just because the word is polysemic in English and they translate it just as what they do. So this previous analysis according to frame term-based terminology is very important. So this is what they call domain dynamics. And I do think that those domain dynamics may be helpful with the help of frame-based terminology, and also what we do to call frame-based translation in this case. So the translation based on frame-based terminology. And those are my references, and thank you very much for listening. And before I end this presentation, I would also again thank you very much for mentioning those small interest groups, special interest groups that we have in this association. And if you want to sign up for to have more information, those are the links to sign up. We have one called Human, Machine, and Language, and it was the I don't know if you heard about the Let Me project before. This Let Me project was converted into this special interest group, and we do have information. We will organize workshops and seminars. And if you want to have only information about what we do welcome you to sign up. And the second one is about special interest group on language learning and teaching. And we are now organizing a webinar about the use of AI together with language learning and teaching. So it's for free, of course, and you can just join to have information. I think you will like having the knowing about us, about what we do. And благодаря много for everything, for your attention. It's my pleasure.